In a world littered with superhumans, there exists heroes who kept the city safe from those who decided to use their powers for evil and their own personal gain. Kids idolize and look up to such heroes, aspiring to be like them someday. Just like our main protagonist Johnny Bolt, who was watching his favorite TV show when his stinky mom comes and turns it off. Johnny lives a troubled life because of his feminist single mother, who also continues to bring strange men home at night. Johnny goes to his room where he hard copes to himself that one day he will escape this place. To take his mind off things, Johnny finds comfort in reading his comics about the Utopian, his favorite superhero. However, he can't even get 2 minutes of peace as his mom comes barging in the room, telling him to go to sleep. She turns off his light and closes the door behind her, but just then Johnny's light turns back on again. Much to her dismay, this happens a third time, causing her to choose violence with Johnny because he's ruining her night. Johnny insists that he's really trying not to, and as his emotions intensify, the light bulb begins flickering, eventually breaking completely and shattering every source of electricity in his house. Johnny's mom thinks it's just the fuse and orders him to go to bed. However, Johnny has a strange feeling inside him. Upon looking at his broken light bulb, it electrifies, so then he concentrates on his toy car and says the word on, and to his shock it lights up. Johnny then says off and he makes the lights go out. He does this a couple of more times before comprehending that he's really got superpowers, and freaks out happier than ever due to his newfound abilities. Johnny then begins messing with the streetlight outside his house, and then the entire neighborhood until he eventually breaks every light source in the city. He even blew up the TV downstairs while his mom was getting railed. The following morning, Johnny rides his bike to school and meets his best friend Tom, who he can't wait to show his superpowers to. Johnny rides straight into traffic but uses his power on the lights so he can breeze right past, leaving Tom completely dumbfounded. At school, Johnny sets his sights on his bully, a popular guy named Dave. He purposefully walks past him and as expected, Dave insults them. Tom urges him to just keep walking, but Johnny can't help himself and blows up his precious boombox. Not gonna lie, he did him a favor cause who the f still brings those to school these days? At lunch, which is clearly Tom's favorite time of the day, Johnny explains to him what happened last night. Overexcited, Tom asks what it feels like, to which Johnny explains that when he wishes for something, he can feel an electric shock surging inside his body. Tom says, "I knew it. You've awakened your hero powers." He explains that those with superpowers began with a handful of people who went to a mysterious island on a ship. The children of the first heroes also had powers, so that means Johnny must have some of their blood flowing in his veins. Johnny knows he didn't get it from his retarded mother, so he must have got it from his father, who went to get some milk one day but never came back. Tom also shows him a famous photo of the first heroes that he wants to recreate, and maybe have on the front page of a magazine someday. Just then, an orange-haired girl named Janice appears who Johnny has had a crush on for years. She notices the superhero comics on the table and mentions that she saw the flare once, and wishes she could meet a hero again someday, making Johnny's wood rise. But not for long, as his bully Dave notices Janice talking to them and tells her to get away from those freaks. Later after school, the two go to the arcade, and Johnny uses his powers to rig the machine so they have unlimited tries on it. While playing, Tom says how Johnny could even get into the Utopians' Union of Justice and fight alongside the famous heroes. Johnny believes this is his true calling, and after giving it some thought, he decides to make his hero name Electro Boy. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Dave along with his friends show up and humiliate Johnny in front of Janice, who laughs at him, which really hurts Johnny as he always thought highly of her. When a sad Johnny returns home, he asks his mom who his real father is, but she just sends him to his room as she's busy rizzing up the TV repairman. As soon as Johnny gets to his room, he begins designing a costume, and the following day at lunch he shows Tom, who thinks it's some hot garbage. So being the superhero nerd, he tells Johnny that he will design it himself, and shows him at the arcade after school. Johnny is over the moon with his design and can't wait to get to work on it. At home, he tries on a bunch of different clothes and outfits in front of Tom. After finally getting it right, he sews the logo design onto the shirt and voila. Over the next couple of days, Tom becomes somewhat of a mentor to Johnny. After being his human punching bag, Tom says they need to awaken his spirit and takes Johnny to the arcade while it's closed. He tells him just to turn on the sign, so Johnny places his hand on the electrical box but ends up using too much power, making the whole sign explode. Next, he tries getting Johnny to fly using his power, since all the best heroes get around by flying. However, Johnny just ended up floating without knowing how to get himself back down. The next day, they try looking for trouble in the neighborhood so Johnny can make his debut. However, there isn't really anything going on, and Tom's fat ass can't help eating candy any chance he gets. No superhero has ever even shown up in this town, so instead they decide to make his debut at the local pool, since everyone will be there as it's about to be summer vacation. After school, Johnny gears up to make his debut as Electro Boy, and Tom is ready with the camera in hand. It's showtime and Johnny is just getting his bearings, but suddenly launches himself in the sky, losing control. After regaining some control, Johnny descends down so he's hovering over the pool. People in the pool begin noticing him, and just then Johnny announces himself as Electro Boy. He declares that from now, he will keep this neighborhood safe and prevent crime, and all the kids begin getting excited. He sees Janice looking at him, which puts a smile on his face. However, Dave starts to recognize who he is and shouts Johnny Bolt's name. This begins to throw off Johnny, and it doesn't take long for Dave and his friends to start hurling insults at him, calling him a loser and his outfit stupid. As Janice also recognized him, Johnny folds into the pressure and completely loses control, falling straight down into the pool. A few seconds go by and an electric surge strikes down, and instantly the entire pool of innocent people are shocked to death. Yeah, so much for being a hero. The scene is horrifying and causes a ripple effect of tragedies as people are sprinting away from Johnny. It is absolute mayhem, and realizing what he's just done, Johnny's heart skips a beat. After the whole ordeal, Johnny is freaking out. Tom tries calming him down, but Johnny's dream was to become a renowned hero. In his rage, he accidentally electrifies the ATM machine, making a couple of $50 bills fly out. He then does it on purpose, making as much come out as he wants. Since his chances of being a hero are basically over, Johnny says that he will become the real deal at being a super crook. Nearly 2 decades later, we find Johnny incarcerated at the Supermax prison, which was a prison specifically made to contain criminals with superpowers. After completing his 8-month-long detainment, Johnny is finally being released. The guards release the restraining vest that prevented Johnny's powers, and with the intention of turning a new leaf, he heads to the exit of the prison facility. On his way out, he glances over at the decorations being sent inside. A guard escorting Johnny informs him about a planned celebration that was due to be held in the prison, a gift to the prison staff and inmates from Christopher Matz, infamously known as the Bastard, and is the world's most renowned supervillain, with the power to psychically explode the heads of his victims whenever they cross him. Upon reaching the exit, Johnny bids farewell to the guard as he pulls out his drippy shades. Right outside, Johnny is met by his girlfriend named Casey, who's arrived to pick him up from prison. Upon reaching home, Johnny just wants to smash, but heads into the living room only to find his best friends waiting for him. He goes to embrace his friends, who've been waiting for his release for almost a year. The gang have a pizza party for the occasion. Meanwhile, the celebration in the Supermax prison is being hosted by Christopher Matz. A prisoner that was doubting the Bastard's abilities is put into place when another prisoner with a Karen haircut reminds him about a person called Danny. Danny had scammed Matz and disappeared. In retaliation, Matz proceeded to kill everyone close to Danny, to the point that Danny went totally insane. Matz, aka the Bastard, is very much a legendary villain that is brutal and unforgiving, and a guard overhearing the prisoner corroborates Danny's tragic story, as Matt's powers allows him to explode the heads of his victims from a distance. Many deaths he caused were never able to be connected to him. Matz is also the boss of the largest supervillain syndicate called the Network. Back at Johnny's place, the party is still going in full swing. His friends let him in on a heist that they had been planning since he's been away. The plan is something they've never done before. The 4 of them would hit 10 jewelry stores in 10 minutes. This is possible because all the stores are close to one another and there's rarely any crime downtown, so superheroes are less likely to interfere with their plans. Johnny is hands down sold in the well-crafted strategy. On the other hand, Casey, who overhears the entire thing, is not pleased to say the least. Casey herself works at a cafe, and she just wants Johnny to leave the villain life behind for a normal job and become a brokey. However, Johnny refuses to work under someone. Casey gets fed up with his friends as they're supportive of Johnny's bad decisions, and so she uses her mind control powers to send all of them out of the house. With the 2 of them now alone, Johnny and Casey began to undress. Meanwhile, Mr. Matz, who is met by Salamander, informs him that the party at the Supermax prison went smoothly. Back to Johnny, he tells Casey that he's probably going to do the heist tomorrow. Casey tries to talk some sense into Johnny, but Johnny explains that they're desperately in need of cash because of his imprisonment. Casey then reveals to him that the heist plan was actually put together by the Network, not his friends. Hence, some of the heist goods would be given to the Network as payment. Casey reminds Johnny about the network's cutthroat ways of getting their money. Johnny says, well, we need some excitement, and Casey agrees. However, she tells him that it's all about having a balance. The heist plan is too risky and not worth it, so Johnny, seemingly convinced, agrees that he won't do the heist tomorrow. Well, the next thing we see is Johnny already balls deep in the heist as he prepares to rob the last jewelry store along with his pals. Everything is going smoothly until they notice a very expensive item, and not being able to help themselves, they decide to steal it as well, only to realize that they had gone overtime and now the cops are onto them. Due to the alarm setting off, they immediately make a run for it. Just as they take off, police nearby are alerted and they jump right into action. Nearby, a bald police officer who has prejudice against supervillains immediately goes crazy as he stomps on his accelerator and joins the cat and mouse chase. After catching up with Johnny, the bald police officer tries to trap the gang of crooks by bringing his car in front of them and slowing his car, forcing them to halt their escape. However, just as the officer was closing in, Johnny uses his shock powers to fry the police squad cars, making their plan to box them in fail miserably. As Johnny and his men continued their escape, they once again faced a bunch of cop cars which had blocked the road ahead. After getting their escapeway blocked by the cops completely, Johnny uses the help of his teammate, Transmit, who uses his powers to teleport all of them through the cop cars which had blocked the road. Meanwhile, Casey, who was watching the news, immediately recognizes Johnny and becomes infuriated with him for breaking his promise to not to be a crook again. Back to Johnny. Johnny once again uses the help of his teammate, Frostbite, to form a huge ice trail which causes the police cars chasing behind them lose their grip and are not able to continue their chase. After getting away from the cops, Johnny asks his friends if the heist was planned by the network, but they do not give him an answer. Moreover, he also complains that he does not want to go back to Supermax, the jail for villains with superpowers, one day after he had gotten out of it. After a while, the villains notice that the cop helicopters are bringing a superhero known as the Man Mountain. They try to keep moving forward, but Man Mountain causes them to slow down. Pinched, Johnny shocks him, which only hurts him for a second, but the other villains also attack him in order to defeat him. After one of Johnny's friends, Kismet, uses his powers to give Man Mountain bad luck, Man Mountain is hit by planes and burned by deadly chemicals, which manages to immobilize him. After defeating Man Mountain, Johnny and his men keep moving, but they once again get interrupted by the sudden arrival of another superhero called Rubberball, who even takes the time to take photos with fans. Upon seeing Rubberball's confidence, Johnny tries attacking him but can't land a hit in because of his insane speed. Rubberball's determination to stop them is scary, destroying any and everything in his path. After a while, Rubberball is able to knock Transmit's bike down, and after losing it he immediately teleports to Johnny. As the group moves forward, Rubberball continues to carelessly knock down buildings in order to stop them. After an intense chase, Johnny finally uses the help of Frostbite, who uses his powers to create a bunch of icy pillars. Eventually, Frostbite is able to immobilize Rubberball with his freezing abilities. With Rubberball immobilized, Johnny uses his shock powers to knock him out whilst Kismet crushes his legs before continuing their escapeway. After getting close to the helicopter they had to escape the city, they suddenly get teleported back into the city by a superhero named the Praetorian, a prominent member of the Union of Justice, who are basically like the Avengers on cocaine. Praetorian immediately garners the attention of the bystanders as he was one of the most renowned superheroes. He possesses 200 different abilities, some of which he's not even aware of himself. While standing before Johnny, Praetorian uses his cloning powers to make duplicates of himself. As he orders Johnny and his friends to surrender, all four of them decide to run away. But with all the duplicates of himself, Praetorian could use a countless number of abilities all at once. As expected, one by one Johnny's friends is mercilessly defeated by Praetorian. Johnny, who is the last one remaining, calls Praetorian out for his unfair use of 4 clones against him. So to make the fight fair, Praetorian releases all of his clones, making it a 1v1 against him and Johnny. However, out of a change of heart, Praetorian overlooks Johnny's crimes as he pities him after learning that Johnny was caught after only being free from prison for a day. After giving Johnny and his friends a warning, Praetorian flies away from the scene. A few moments later, Casey arrives and tells Johnny to hurry inside the car. At that moment, Johnny realizes that Praetorian's change of heart was actually Casey using her mind control powers on him. All of Johnny's friends are impressed by Casey's amazing show of powers. However, Casey informs them that she only controlled Praetorian out of sheer luck. as Praetorian gains new powers every other day. There is no telling what powers he has or will have gained in his favor. Casey scolds all of them for being so reckless with heist. However, her nagging fell on deaf ears as Johnny and his friends were too focused on their spoils. Meanwhile, returning to the Union of Justice headquarters, Praetorian is confused and unaware of why he had let Johnny and his friends leave scot-free. The scene cuts to Casey, who tends to Johnny's injuries. Frustrated, she tells Johnny that she cannot continue living the way she is right now. She warns Johnny that she would eventually leave him if he continues to take on risky adventures. Moreover, she is mad that Johnny had previously lied to her face. She advises Johnny to pull off a really big haul once and for all and then retire by living off of the money gained. For that very reason, Casey herself works as a cafe server while studying for her MBA as she knows that the payoff is worth it in the end. Johnny asks her if they could even find such a highly rewarding job. Seeing Johnny's willingness to participate in her wishes, Casey begins by informing him about the Heat, who was a notorious criminal in the past. The Heat robbed many banks and stores, yet he never killed anyone in his entire run as a criminal. The Heat was a living legend that was still talked about throughout the decades. That very guy was also Casey's former teacher. Casey tells Johnny that the Heat was gathering a team for a big job requested by an overseas client. According to the job, they had to recapture an item that was stolen from that client. For that single job, the team was to be paid $50 million. That much money alone was enough to satisfy needs for a long time. Johnny agrees to the job as Casey was also supportive to the idea. The next day, Casey and Johnny head to Chicago to meet the Heat. Casey leads Johnny to the Heat's dry cleaning shop for the arranged meetup. The Heat, also known as Carmine, greets Casey and is glad that she took up on his offer. Carmine reveals that he had opened a dry cleaner to look ordinary. He also takes Johnny by surprise by revealing that he knew of Johnny's electric superpower beforehand. As they stroll in the hallway, Johnny notices some old equipment framed on the wall. Carmine reveals that he used that equipment to burn through guarded gates. Johnny learns that Carmine did not have any superpowers and in fact relied on his equipment. Johnny turns his attention to the framed newspaper articles that stated about the Heat's arrest on multiple occasions. Opposed to his legend, Carmine states that he did in fact have a streak of arrests. However, he is satisfied in taking advantage of the falsified legend about himself that created an image of him being a quote-unquote supervillain in the common populace. Johnny calls Carmine out for being a fraudster. Unlike Carmine, Johnny liked taking actual risks head-on without creating lies about himself. Carmine leads Johnny and Casey to his office where all the other team members were present. Carmine states that he had gathered a team of obscure villains so that they are not mixed up with the network. One of the members, called the Ghost, realizes that their team was about to take on a job so difficult that even the network doesn't take it up. The Ghost calls Johnny a perfectly obscure villain for the job. Johnny takes this as an insult to his villain hustle, and he proceeds to get in the guy's face. The Ghost continues provoking Johnny, leading Johnny to display his powers to everyone present. Johnny causes a blackout in the nearby areas. The Ghost then proceeds to show his powers, which allowed him to pass through Johnny with ease. As his name suggested, the Ghost was able to control his body mass, allowing him to pass through objects. In the past, the Ghost was attacked by some prisoners when he was saved by Carmine, who offered to let him join his gang. In the present, Carmine continues the meeting by revealing the details of the mission. The mission was divided into two parts. The first part was for them to rescue another member of the team crucial for the second part of the mission. That member, named TK McCabe, had been caught by the superhero Gladiator when he was found committing larceny. He was due to be transported to the Supermax prison by plane. Hence, they needed to rescue TK before he reached the prison. Johnny recognizes TK as a former friend, and he does remember TK having strong powers. However, he believes that going to Florida to rescue TK would be very expensive. Carmine puts Johnny and the minds of other teammates at ease by revealing that the client would be covering all the expenses. Moreover, as Mats was preparing to hand over the control of the network to Salamander, the network was on hiatus. This meant that the network's rule of getting fees from supervillains would be temporarily void. While assuring the team about the payment that they would get, Carmine states that he would reveal the second half of the mission after the completion of the first. The next day, Carmine walks into a plane rental, walking straight to reception, but is told that he would need to wait for his Cessna. However, Johnny walks in saying that they needed to call 911 since somebody had been caught by the Cessna's propeller. The receptionist leaves and so do Carmine and Johnny, walking past the man who had been killed by the small plane. They walk to a bigger plane and walk inside, where Ghost was already waiting for them. The Diesel brothers join them on the plane, excited to be leaving. Johnny joins Carmine in the cockpit as they prepare to leave and they are given the cue to leave. Carmine tells him not to be worried, but Johnny says that he lives for that type of thing. He hands him the plane's manual with the wirings so he could learn them and advises him not to compare his powers to other people's because he would drive himself crazy, and tells him that what was best was to find his own style. On the plane, a Supermax guard feels a small power surge as Carmine flew above their plane. Carmine asks Johnny if he could deactivate the restraint device TK was in, but Johnny says it was impossible. The crew prepares for Plan B while the Supermax plane tried communicating. Johnny deactivated their comms as Ghost and two other members known as the Diesel brothers throw themselves onto the Supermax plane. Their shouting alerts the Gladiator, who watches in shock as one of the brothers named Sammy throws himself at a propeller. The bigger brother Roddy tries attacking the Gladiator, but receives a punch to the face which dislocates his jaw. But he tells Ghost that he had gotten rid of the Gladiator. Ghost flies down to the Supermax plane and prepares to attack the guards inside the plane. The pilots say that they need to get to Supermax as fast as possible and start flying up. Carmine asks Johnny if he could slow them down, which he says he can do. It takes a lot of his concentration, but Johnny says that that was nothing, also mentioning that he could not think of a better way to show his style off. Roddy fights the Gladiator, but is taken down while told that people like him were nothing without their powers because they had no discipline. Ghost was trying to open the lock while being laughed at by the guards. However, Carmine tells Johnny that Ghost was a famous safecracker. Ghost cannot open TK's lock, so Carmine tells them to change to Plan C, which they say does not exist. Johnny tells Carmine to fly them closer to the Supermax place and manages to turn it off. The plane starts falling fast, with Carmine and Johnny chasing after it. As the Supermax plane plummets to the ground, Johnny tells Ghost that there was nothing he could do as Carmine realized what he was trying. Ghost tells the guards to cooperate because they would all die except for him if they crashed. The guard cooperates and TK uses his power to stop the plane from crashing. Everybody celebrates and TK kicks all the guards out of the plane. TK asks if Johnny was with them and they all get together to leave. Carmine congratulates Johnny, Casey, Ghost, TK, and the Diesel brothers on a job well done and tells them that they needed one more person for the next part of the job. He tells all of them that the job was risky but he had a plan which would be the next day. Carmine tells them that they needed to decide if they were in or out. Casey tells Carmine that even if everybody was in, if something sounded off, she was out. Johnny asks who the target was, which Carmine says could be seen from there. Casey realizes that Carmine wanted them to break into the Union of Justice. The villains think Carmine has lost his mind and want to quit the job since it was suicide. The Diesel brothers and TK prepare to leave when Carmine tells them that Brainwave, one of the heroes, could read thoughts, and would probably be there within less than a minute since he could read their thoughts. Ghost grabs Carmine by the head while TK tries to clear his thoughts. Casey tells Carmine to just tell them what he wanted to say, and he points out that Brainwave was not there right now and was in Beijing. Johnny tells TK that Carmine could not get the other man on the phone, so he would be walking them through the next part of the plan. They talk about their time in Supermax, where TK could not see his powers, and reminisce about how they met each other in Supermax. TK tells him about the guard who had killed a villain and Johnny had started clapping, as the rest of the villains started doing the same, basically telling the guard he was a murderer. They say they do not ever want to go to Supermax and they all walk back in. Carmine and the Diesel brothers say that they are all in, and Carmine tells Casey that they would be making $50 million. All the villains are excited by that, but Ghost asks what the real plan is. Carmine tells him that they would steal Count Orlok's helmet, who was a legendary supervillain from Romania and was their sponsor. His helmet made his powers double, so they wanted to get it back. Ghost says he is in but does not want to touch the helmet. Casey says that they need to know the most important part, how to defeat the powerful superheroes. But Carmine says that he had thought of everything. Carmine tells Casey the plan, and Johnny says that not even the network would dare attack the Union of Justice. Ghost adds that the bastard was getting ready to retire. Carmine tells them that if they moved quickly, there was a big chance that they would not need to ask the network for money. Johnny tells Casey that he was in and tells her that they needed to do it, but Casey refuses. She asks where the last member is and Carmine says that he would call Forecast again. Forecast picks up the phone and tells them that he was in. Carmine tells Casey that Forecast had the ability to change the weather, and after seeing that strong power for herself, she counts herself in. At the Plaza Hotel, Johnny and Casey check in. Once they make it to the room, Johnny is excited, but Casey is not feeling as excited as he is. She looks at their reservation paper and says that they were only a pretend married couple. However, Johnny says that the next day it could be for real since it would change everything for them. They celebrate with a beer and vow to leave crime behind so as not to end up in Supermax. As Casey and Johnny prepare to have some alone time, they get a phone call from Carmine, who tells them to sleep well and not drink, but Johnny hangs up on him. Outside Union of Justice, Johnny, the Diesel brothers, Carmine, Ghost, and Casey work a hot dog truck. Sammy complains that Roddy is not helping him as the latter plays solitaire. Outside, Ghost asks Casey to make him see something pleasant if it looked like he was going to be killed, which she agrees to. Johnny says that he would not need fantasies because all he would want to see is the real Casey until his final breath. Johnny tells the group that he had wanted to visit the Union of Justice since he was a kid. Carmine, Ghost, the Diesel brothers, and Casey move forward. Carmine tells them that as soon as the superheroes left, they would take down the security system and cut themselves out of the surveillance footage, which would be Casey's job. Johnny, the Diesel brothers, Carmine, Ghost, and Casey start looking for the helmet, trying to focus on Count Orlok. Johnny and Casey remember when they attacked a wine cellar, hoping they did not screw up like that time. They find the magic helmet and get excited. Praetorian gets on an elevator and reaches floor G, where he sees Count Orlok's helmet floating. He wonders if he is hallucinating and tells Ghost, who was carrying the helmet, that there was no use in hiding. He hits Ghost with a fire attack, which breaks the helmet. The villains are in shock, while Praetorian tells them that they are idiots because they would never display the real thing there and only replicas. He reveals that all the real objects were in a vault underground. They were being kept invisible by Casey's power. Carmine exclaims that it is underground and yells at Ghost to phase all the way there. Ghost goes underground while Praetorian starts throwing columns from the building at them. Praetorian recognizes that there was something in his head like in San Francisco. Hitting Casey, he is able to reveal all the villains. He looks at Johnny and tells him that he feels like they had met before. At the Union of Justice, people run out as the Praetorian approaches Johnny, who says that he had never met the Praetorian before, and complains that it had been him who had found them. Praetorian realizes what their plan had been all along and wants to take care of things. Praetorian shoots water at Casey, but Johnny protects her. Carmine tells them they should run while they can, so he picks Casey up and they run. Praetorian throws a large rock at the villains as Johnny tells Carmine to leave. The Diesel brothers complain that Praetorian has too many powers and did not even know which one would be next. Praetorian reveals his next power was laser eyes and starts shooting around, killing many civilians in the process. Roddy and Sammy try to attack him, but even as Sammy sticks his finger into Praetorian's eye, it gets shattered. Praetorian crushes Sammy's arm and throws him towards Johnny, who had just shot at him. Praetorian shoots at Johnny as Carmine and Casey hide. Johnny gets out from being buried under rubble as Ghost coughs confused. He sees that the Praetorian was chasing after Johnny, and miraculously is able to find Count Orlok's helmet. Praetorian tells Johnny that he is pathetic, while Johnny asks if he does not think he's doing a bit much. He asks Praetorian how he could do that to his own HQ, but the latter does not care, telling him he never goes easy. Praetorian tells Johnny to prepare to die as he lights up 2 fireballs in his hands. However, Johnny turns on the fire sprinklers and manages to turn him off for a bit. Johnny and Ghost reunite, also seeing Carmine above them. He tells Ghost to put on the helmet and say the magic words, but Ghost refuses because of the helmet's reputation of being cursed. After a bit of convincing, Ghost agrees to do it, but nobody knows the spell. However, inside the helmet supercalifragilisticexpialidocious was written, which made Ghost realize that must be the spell. As they argue over who has to put it on, Praetorian wakes up and gets ready to face them. Ghost says the spell, puts the helmet on, and it turns on. He wishes to be taken somewhere far away and safe, and they vanish from the Praetorian sight. TK and Forecast are also taken to safety. Ghost, Carmine, Johnny, TK, the Diesel brothers, Forecast, and Casey all make it away as Ghost tries to remove the helmet. Johnny asks Casey if she is okay, but she asks where they are. Carmine tells her that they are in Black Rock, Romania. Casey tells Johnny that that was too close, but they are all happy they have been successful in the end. A butler approaches the crew and tells them to make themselves at home. Carmine says that they should probably start celebrating with a toast in which they say that Count Orlok would be returning as the greatest supervillain ever, unstoppable even by the network. The butler agrees and tells them that they were all invited to be part of the new syndicate, which Casey remembers hearing of. Carmine tells them that the syndicate had predated the network and Casey goes to take a shower. Carmine tells the group about the syndicate, which was formed by the Heat, Count Orlok, and the Bastard. In the meantime, the Union of Justice was starting, so they decided to go to Europe. Carmine says that they were a great group, but Orlok and the Bastard had never gotten along. However, as all supervillains, all of them ended up betraying each other, and the Bastard formed the network. Later, the castle became a club and a movie studio. It had been 30 years since the Syndicate had been founded. Casey gets out of the tub, but is being watched by someone who likes her body. Casey walks into the room, where she sees that everybody was already wasted. The doorbell rings and the Diesel brothers get very excited about the pizza getting there. However, as Roddy opens the door, he gets punched in the face by Praetorian, who stops all of them from moving. He laughs and tells his boss everything was clear. The Bastard, his boss, walks in and wants to know if he had interrupted a celebration. He tells Carmine he could not believe his hideout, and Praetorian says that they probably could not believe that a superhero like him was with a villain like him, and reveals that he was a double agent. The Bastard says that he would have never thought that the Heat would gang up with Count Orlok again, and tells them that their behavior needs to be rectified. Praetorian says that they knew where they were because Carmine had shouted the rock right before they disappeared. Praetorian is impressed with the power Count Orlok's helmet has, but the Bastard says it is not to be underestimated, and adds that even if he was just about to retire, he needed to protect the network. Praetorian tells them that they needed to give them more than the usual 30% because they could not operate from behind the network's back. The Bastard tells them that he would take everything, and adds that betrayal also warranted paying extra in blood as well. He says that normally he would kill a family member, a friend, or a lover, but he was not in the mood. While they were being watched, the Bastard makes the butler's head explode. The pizza makes its way to the front door, and Orlok reveals himself, saying he had been hiding in the attic. He does not see the Bastard standing behind him and asks where his helmet is. He turns around and sees the Bastard, who tells him he hates surprises. He is in shock that the Bastard is there and starts yelling, but the Bastard makes his head explode as well. Praetorian and the Bastard walk away with all the money, but before he leaves, Praetorian tells them to not tell anyone what happened or they would kill them. Johnny turns the TV on, in which news about the attack on the Union of Justice was showing, saying that Praetorian had been able to recover Count Orlok's helmet. Johnny sadly watches as he drinks. The Diesel brothers, TK, and Carmine are also feeling down, while Ghost says they could not even do anything with the helmet now that Orlok was dead, and TK says that Mats and Praetorian were too much for them to handle. TK complains that the team was bad, but Johnny reminds him that they saved him. Ghost tries to leave and thanks Carmine for getting his hopes up, but Sammy throws an axe at him. When he throws it back, the Diesel brothers attack him together. Forecast makes it rain on top of the fight, making them separate. After a while, the bartender tells him that Carmine was an old fool as he slept on the bar. But Johnny says that the heist was supposed to go better than planned and be the biggest thing the Heat had ever done. The bartender does not care and asks him to pay for Carmine's drinks, so Johnny goes to an ATM and withdraws some cash. Later, Johnny and Casey ride in their car, but the latter is quiet and does not feel like talking. When they park, Casey cries and starts hitting the car. Johnny simply hugs her once they walk outside. Johnny gets down on one knee, saying that even if they could never be villains, he wanted to be with her and wanted to build a life in the future with her, making a ring out of electricity. Casey says okay while smiling, and both of them kiss. The day before his wedding, Johnny shaves and opens the door, seeing nobody there. However, he is kidnapped and wakes up inside a car. Frostbite tells him that it was his last night as a single man, so he, Transmit, and Kismet wanted to give him a bachelor's party. They are kicked from a strip club for being villains and are all very drunk. They do not have any money, so Johnny hacks an ATM, which shocks all his friends. He explains that that was how he got around as a kid. Frostbite asks Johnny if he would not like to do one last big job for Casey's sake, but Johnny says that he would be clean now. However, Kismet says that his mother had once told him that money is always why marriage for love ends in divorce, and tell him that there were many ATMs around. Transmit brings them their suits, which makes Johnny agree to do it. They ride on a big wagon and Johnny hacks the ATMs so Transmit could teleport and collect the money. They ride and Johnny wants to go to a bookstore to get Casey a present, since Casey wanted MBA books, which were expensive. The cops go to the scene of the crime and Johnny, Transmit, Frostbite, and Kismet start running. Praetorian joins the cops as well and wonders where the villains are. The cops tell him that they are on a train, so they go to the station, where he gets on a train and finds the group of villains. Johnny starts running away from Praetorian, who shifts his focus from his friends to him instead. When Johnny believes he had escaped, he turns around and finds the gladiator looking at him and gets punched in the face. Meanwhile, Johnny is caught and is sent back to Supermax. His cellmate tells him they should play chess, but Johnny is sad that he could not make a phone call. 5 years later, Casey works at a diner, where Johnny walks in wearing a suit and greeting her happily. Johnny apologizes, but Casey tells him that she has nothing to say to him, so he should get out. He tells her that he had stolen to try to get them something nice for their wedding, but she does not want to hear it, feeling betrayed. Johnny wonders what she was doing at a diner and asks what had happened to her MBA since she had a great power and was very smart. She tells him that she got expelled from her MBA since she had punched her professor who tried to cop a feel. She tells him that she always had low grades, and even as a villain always had to work as a team, telling him to get out. Carmine walks in the coffee shop scared and falls down. He asks them for help. Johnny reads a journal in which he fantasized about being Electro Boy and being inducted into the Union of Justice. Meanwhile, Carmine slept scared and Casey was not feeling well, telling Johnny that she could not believe that Carmine had tried scamming the Salamanders casino. Johnny worries that they could not get $100 million and knows that Carmine would be killed if they could not pay. Casey says that their only option is to get him out of the country, but Johnny says that he got info at Supermax. But Casey will not listen to him and tells him to get out. However, Johnny does not think that's what the Carmine he knew would do. Johnny keeps reading about Electro Boy and smiles while reminiscing. Carmine and Johnny visit Ghost, who tells them he cannot help because every one of Carmine's jobs always ends in a disaster. However, Carmine tells him that it was not his idea, but Johnny's. Ghost tells them he is no longer a villain and is doing a good job as an architect. Johnny asks him to do it for Carmine, so Ghost offers him to help him live out of the country as a way of gratitude for all he had done for him in the past. TK leaves his job, but is told that he needed to unload a truck. He uses his powers to make it unload faster, but his boss gets angry at him, telling him that he could not use his powers. However, TK tells him that his wife would be fired if he did not make it back home in time. His boss tells him to put it all back and unload it once again. But Johnny gets there and tells him that he looks like he could use a new job. TK tells him he needs to stay out of trouble. Forecast makes it rain so that people would buy him an umbrella. Johnny approaches him and knows that he was provoking all the rain. The Diesel brothers are in a cage fight, which Carmine and Johnny think is gross. In the fight, Roddy and Sammy end up winning and Johnny believes that he would definitely need their help in order for his plan to work out. TK, Carmine, the Diesel brothers, Ghost, and Forecast all join Johnny, who tells them that the legend of Electro Boy was about to begin. Casey walks into the room and tells Johnny that his plan better work. Johnny drinks while Casey tells him to just tell them who the target was. Johnny tells her that she would know soon enough, but they needed another team member. Carmine wakes when Casey mentions that a target was there. Johnny greets Glenda, who tells him that he could not decide what to wear for their date. Johnny tells him that he thinks he looks better when he wears a suit that is tighter. Glenda asks what he means by that and Johnny tells him to have a seat, calling him Gladiator. Ghost mentions that Johnny is insane, but Johnny tells him that he knew who he was thanks to Supermax and also knew that he spent time cheating on his wife, which angers Gladiator, but Johnny threatens to send an intimate photo if he did anything to him. Gladiator asks what he wants and Johnny asks for help with a heist, which angers him even more, saying that working for him would never be meaningful to him. Johnny tells him that the heist was on an island south of Japan, which was off limits for the Union of Justice and the Network. Gladiator and all of Johnny's friends wonder if he really wanted to attack the bastard, but Johnny mentions that Praetorian was also there, which sparked Gladiator's interest. Johnny tells him that the bastard was enjoying his retirement, having opened Casino Grand Granite. Ghost counts himself out, but Casey tells him that it could work as long as they got in unnoticed. Johnny tells Gladiator that it was a good chance to get back at Praetorian and also says that he could donate his share to an LGBTQ charity of his choice, also promising to delete those photos. Johnny tells TK, Carmine, the Diesel brothers, Ghost, Casey, and Forecast that he knows there is one airport on the island, which meant security would be tight. Casey does not want to use her power since she could not make an illusion without preparing it enough. She could really only hide 1 or 2 people. They get on the plane and land on the island. On the island, Ghost separates from the group and Johnny and Casey open up briefcases where the Diesel brothers were being stored. The rest would be taking a ferry, but they would also jump from the ferry. On the island, Gladiator arrives by swimming butterfly at an incredible speed. Johnny, TK, Carmine, the Diesel brothers, Ghost, Casey, Gladiator, and Forecast all take a break on the hot springs. Casey puts on a disguise so that they do not see her naked and Johnny says that he is the only one who could see her like that. But she says that she was just not wasting effort on him. The Diesel brothers tell Gladiator that they were sorry for how things had gone the last time they had encountered him, but he tells them to not talk to him, as he was only there to destroy Praetorian. Ghost was quiet because he is nervous about attacking the bastard, but Johnny tells him that they have a perfect plan. TK, Forecast, and the Diesel brothers want to know about the plan, saying that the first part would be walking to Matt's front door. At the casino, Carmine and Johnny walk in, with the former excited that all of it could be theirs. Ghost says that he did not know there were casinos like that in Japan. TK tries a game, but tries moving it when he loses. However, Ghost stops him from using his powers. The bastard looks out at the casino with Praetorian, and both of them head to the VIP room to meet their guests from the Middle East. Casey and Johnny look at a recreation Casey had made of the bastard's mansion, while the Diesel brothers join them. Ghost wonders how she had done it without being detected by the superpower sensors inside, so she says that when she touches someone, she can read minds without the sensors detecting it. Carmine says that he had done his part and tells them that the main floor had standard superpower sensors and security. But Ghost says that the real problem is the underground rooms connected to the VIP rooms at the back. Forecast gets there late from taking a bath, as Gladiator joins them. Carmine tells them they would take the bastard's briefcase, which was actually a big vault on the inside. However, the real problem is all the sensors that can deactivate their powers. Carmine says that normally the unit is switched off, but if the sensors pick up a use of superpowers, then it turns on, so they need to deactivate the whole system. They want Ghost to use his powers in order to reach it, but he tells them that the island was huge, so he would lose track of where he was, so he would die. Gladiator tells them that they should just give up, but Johnny remembers that whenever a new supervillain has to be registered in the database, they update the software, but it also means the system must be rebooted, so they could destroy it then. Carmine tells them that they would split into two groups to enter the facility. Carmine, Ghost, TK, Forecast, Johnny, the Diesel brothers, and Casey all toast. He thanks them and tells them that he liked that they had a sense of duty. Casey wonders why Mats had made it so even he could not use his powers in his mansion. But Carmine knows that he hated superpowers. Johnny tells them that he had new outfits for their plan, which Gladiator refuses to wear. Casey sits alone at the beach when Johnny joins her. Both of them walk together and Johnny asks if she would really leave, and she says that she would. He tells her that she had done a fantastic job and tells her that she could still do it, but she says that even though she had outgrown heists, she wanted to help the Heat. Johnny tells her that he knows he had done a lot of stupid things, but the stupidest of them all was letting her go. They look up at the sky and there is a banner which says "I'm sorry." Johnny tells her that he had finally understood and says that that would be the last time he ever did a heist. Both of them share a kiss after that. As Johnny sleeps, Casey looks at him and leaves. When she makes it to the airport, she tells Johnny that the plan was risky and she did not want to make the same mistake, hanging up on him. Johnny, TK, Carmine, and Forecast accept that she had left them and agree that they would not use their powers. They plan to infiltrate the security room with the superpower suppression device in order to force the unit to update. They make a small hole and make it underground, but an alarm starts to sound. They know that they cannot use powers as many ninjas start heading towards them. Johnny accidentally uses his powers, which activates guns, so Carmine shoots them with his guns. Johnny starts an update and realizes that they could now use their powers. The scene cuts to Casey, who tries to catch a plane back to her home. However, she is caught by Praetorian and the bastard. Praetorian reveals that he had recognized Casey all because of her previous attempts to control him in the past. Back to Johnny. Johnny tells Carmine and TK that he believed they were in the right place. They are joined by the Diesel brothers, Gladiator, and Ghost. Forecast joins them by making it snow, which Johnny believes would be a good idea for the fringes on the door. Once they freeze, Sammy uses metallic arms in order to rip the door off. They look down towards the vault, which was all the way down, and they jump together. Ghost looks through a wall in order to see how many guards there were behind a wall, and they finally make it through. Johnny tells them that there was one more trap, which detected anyone except for Mats and would rip them apart. However, there was a button to turn the laser off at the end of the corridor. The Diesel brothers get ready to race to the button and take off running. The laser cuts through both Sammy and Roddy, but both of them regenerate quickly and keep running. After 5 minutes, Sammy finally manages to make it to the button and turns it off. Once they all walk across safely, it's time for Carmine to use his heat guns to melt the door. He does it quickly and they finally make it to the briefcase, where all the gold is stored. Carmine tells them the system would restart soon, so they start moving out. TK tells Johnny that with the money he would take his family to Asia. The Diesel brothers, Ghost, Carmine, Forecast, and Gladiator run with them as well when Praetorian shows up, telling them that they were as stupid as they looked. The bastard talks through a PAW system, asking if they really thought they could get away with it, and asks why they would try to steal from him if they knew who he was. Johnny makes fun of him, telling him that was now too old to stop them. That makes the bastard very angry, but the power suppression system reboots. The bastard tells Praetorian that he could now kill the group. Johnny tells Gladiator that it was now his turn to handle Praetorian. However, Gladiator takes his time while Praetorian punches Johnny in the face. Gladiator tells Johnny that he had been waiting to see him get hit. Even without powers, Praetorian seems to be taking his time defeating the villains. Praetorian defeats all the villains, telling them that they were all worthless without their powers. Gladiator finally thinks that that had been enough and tells Praetorian that he could not believe how he had fallen, seeing that he was the bastard's bodyguard. Praetorian tries punching him, but Gladiator grabs his wrist and reveals his face, which frightens Praetorian. Praetorian tries defending himself, but Gladiator is clearly much stronger and sends him flying back and slams him into the ground. Once Praetorian was defeated by Gladiator, Carmine asks if he was dead. Johnny tells Gladiator that he was not supposed to kill him since they never did that, but Gladiator says that he had only left him with some brain damage. Johnny says they should now leave. Casey waves towards Johnny, who is on a small boat and is brought on board. She hugs Johnny, but Carmine tells them that they need to leave, so they take off. Ghost tells Casey that she really had guts in order to do what she had done, as Gladiator smiles. Carmine also says that she followed the rules needed and calls her a great supervillain. Johnny tells her that she was the only one who had been able to go through all of that with her friends. Both of them hug and tell one another that they love them. Casey tells him that they could now retire, which Johnny agrees with. Forecast: TK, the Diesel brothers and the rest celebrate happily. After a time skip of 1 year, in a casino in Manila, Carmine had been able to pay off his $100 million debt and chilled out as told by Johnny. TK took his family on a trip to East Asia. Forecast invested in space exploration. While Ghost used diplomatic pressure on the Greek government and bought a lot of land there while they were in a financial crisis, Roddy put every penny of his money into the development of a 4-dimensional transport system, which meant his time machine was not a bluff, and he had actually earned a doctorate from Princeton. Sammy spent everything on women and liquor, while the Gladiator made sure he could never get blackmailed again, confessing he had been disloyal to his partner, later marrying him. Johnny still wanted to know what to do with Mats 1 year later because he knew that he loved vengeance. His old friend Tommy was working as a writer for the New York Times when he got a letter from Electro Boy, which had the selfie the villains had taken when stealing from Mats. In the photo, the villains used the Salamanders gang's costumes. Tommy was left in shock by that. Johnny and Casey ride on a hot air balloon when Johnny points to the ground, asking her if she would marry him. He gets her a real ring, and she says she would think about them kissing him. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss out on any more of my recaps. Until next time, take care.